Throughout the course, we're going to be using the term liberalism. So what exactly does it mean? Well, it depends on the context. Are you using it historically or contemporary? And how would you know? There's the dictionary definition, things like being free, noble, in favor of democracy, supporting capitalism. Do you remember when we talked about individualism versus collectivism? Well, a liberal in the strictest sense of the term is an individualist because they support free markets, individual rights, and rule of law. But it depends on the context. In the past, a liberal wanted limited government intervention in the economy. Today, they do want some government involvement to help the less fortunate. One problem with a society that's based on the ideas of individualism is that a true liberal has no set definition of what makes the good life. All individuals are free to live their life in any way you want as long as it doesn't interfere with my life. In a libertarian society, there's very few rules, so laws against, for example, the consumption of drugs like heroin wouldn't exist, but laws against impaired driving would, as you're now interfering with the life of others. To help us recognize the context of how the word is being used, we often refer to the early ideas of liberalism by using the term classical liberalism, kind of like classical music. It's old. We first see classical liberalism with its ideas of democracy and individual freedom emerge out of Athens, Greece, and later the Roman Republic. But after the fall of the Roman Empire, chaos spread across Europe and those ideas disappeared as people spent a millennium trying to create an organized society from the anarchy that existed. Once societies became more stable during the 15th and 16th centuries, people had time to think about more than just how to survive. The authority of the Catholic Church was reduced by the Protestant Reformation questioning religion. Exploration and colonization of the New World led to greater wealth as well as the interaction with other cultures. People began to wonder about the role of the individual in society. We call those professional thinkers philosophers. The philosophical ideas that emerged from the Renaissance led to what we call the Age of Enlightenment. The term Renaissance means rebirth, and we were seeing a rebirth of liberal or enlightened ideas. The early liberal philosophers included Locke, Rousseau, Smith, Mill. If you don't remember those names, go back and review the previous lesson. These philosophers challenged the power of European monarchs, claiming that individual freedom should be more important than the power of the king. For example, Locke declared the importance of private property because individual ownership will encourage people to behave in society. We all expect everyone else to follow the rules in order to protect our own selfish interests. That's not to say everyone liked the ideas of classical liberal philosophers. There were also philosophers who argued against these individualist ideas. One of the more famous is Edmund Burke. He witnessed the bloody French Revolution, which was based on classical liberal ideas. He saw how freedom led to chaos and the reign of terror, which was killing people because they weren't liberal enough for revolutionaries, somehow messing up the idea of liberalism and freedom there. Burke was concerned that individualism forgets all of the work and ideas of previous generations, which deserves respect because it brought us to the place where we are today. It also ignores the relationships that exist between you and the groups you belong to, and that you should feel a responsibility towards. And how can you create a unified society if everyone has a different idea of what's right? Think about the concerns that many multicultural societies have today with the accommodation of religious rights when the religious beliefs might contradict liberal values. A liberal says they have the right to believe what they want, even if that belief is to take away the freedom of others. So a fundamentalist terrorist has the right to their belief, but not to act on them, as that then interferes with other rights, like the right to life. Burke wanted a society based on strong traditions and principles. Of course, if there's classical liberalism, that means there must be modern liberalism, just like there's modern music to contrast against classical music. When liberal economics were first adopted, the rapid success that came from entrepreneurs having the freedom to buy and sell what you wanted led people to believe that government intervention just got in the way of economic growth. If people were free to take risks and were responsible for themselves, the economy should always grow. Classical liberals felt having things like government bailouts just encourages people to be lazy and punishes the hard workers who are forced to pay taxes. But after a century of those classical liberal or laissez-faire economics, the rich were getting richer on the backs of the poor laborer who were being severely mistreated. Liberal supporters began to see the need for some government intervention to give everyone the chance to succeed. You can't expect someone who's worked in a factory since they were a small child to have the same chance to compete in the marketplace as someone who spent their childhood being educated. Another issue with classical liberal ideas in the area of politics is that, for example, while the US government seemed to be progressing well in the 19th century, attempts to establish those same ideas in Europe weren't going so well. France had revolution after revolution. In addition, women and other minority groups weren't being considered, which creates dissonance, which is a big word of the day that basically says, how can you say you believe in a society that follows the ideas of individualism if the only individuals to have rights are rich white men? So, liberals began to demand a degree of government intervention, things like public education and other social programs that would still encourage a free market, but take a bit of freedom away through regulations and taxes so everyone would have a chance to participate. Many modern liberal ideas were also a response to the outright rejection of anything to do with liberalism that occurred in the 20th century. This rejection of liberalism led to communist revolutions and fascist takeovers in Europe. Leaders like Stalin and Hitler argued that liberalism had only led to economic and social instability. People turned to a strong leader, otherwise known as dictators, for solutions to their problems, arguing that the state had the duty to protect the citizens, something Hobbes had said a long time ago. So to sum it all up, liberalism is a loaded word that needs to be used carefully. The meaning of the word itself has changed over time and means different things to different people. In the past, a liberal wanted freedom from the government because there were so many controls under the European monarchies. Today, a liberal is someone who wants opportunities for everyone to succeed, so they're willing to sacrifice some of their freedoms to make sure everyone has a chance. In a nutshell, a liberal is someone who feels the world would be a better place if rights and freedoms are protected and promoted.